Non-reversible jaws. No, I haven't got the other set. Yes, this is on the limit. (22 and 32). We're at about 1.45 to 1. We'll see how that works. Could have hogged out a lot more material here, but I think the extra inertia is just a bonus. It just helps the engine run smoother, I think. Let's talk a little bit about what's been going on and why, and what I think will happen with this pulley, and so on. Up until last test, when we tried the 1-to-1 ratio, all tests have been run with a 2.2 to 1 ratio, 133 or so cc for each revolution of the engine into a 50cc cylinder. Now you would think the math would be really simple here, like how many times can you fit 50 into 133 and you have your boost pressure. It's not the case though. If you're a 4-stroke guy, you're probably familiar with valve overlap, the open time of the intake and the exhaust valve overlapping. Now in my 2-stroke engine, there's a lot more valve overlap. If it weren't for my rotary exhaust valve closing the exhaust duct at about 45 degrees after bottom dead center, my transfers or intake ports and exhaust port would overlap all the while those transfers were open. I have this rotary exhaust valve. The overlap is from the transfers open until that valve closes the exhaust duct. Less overlap than in a normal 2-stroke. My engine still has like 160 degrees of valve overlap. The blower can't distinguish my engine from a 4-stroke with like 300 degrees of valve overlap. That's where a lot of the flow goes, and that's why we're not seeing the boost pressure you would think you would see here. We are building more boost as the RPM rises though. Part of the reason is that the blower is sealing better when it's spinning faster. Part of the reason is the time area. These ports have a fixed area, but how long they're open, that's decided by RPM, increasingly smaller with higher RPM. The area is the same, but it's open for less time. That's good in the way that the blower can build more boost. Bad because we're losing area for the exhaust to escape from the cylinder, and also for new fresh mix to get in there. I think at higher RPM, with the ratio we've been running, we've run out of time area for the exhaust gases to escape and new fresh mix to get in there at the boost pressure we were able to build. What we're doing now is seeing if we can build more pressure at lower RPM where the time areas are larger. See if we can get some more torque down there. Later we might increase port areas and see if we can gain more up high also. But for now we'll focus on lower RPM. Yesterday night I was laying in my bed waiting to go to sleep, and I did what most people do. I was visualizing the inner workings of a 2-stroke engine. Then it suddenly occurred to me, I've been so focused on doing two separate things: the resonance in the PIP engine and the brute force nature of this engine. I think I can consolidate the two, unify, make them come together, converge, interlock, marry. You probably know by now what a 2-stroke pipe does, how it works, and why you need it. This divergent cone sucks exhaust out of the cylinder. This convergent cone pushes mixture back into the cylinder and blocks the open exhaust port on the upstroke so that fresh mix can't escape. It also supercharges the cylinder slightly. The open end of a pipe will also cause a reflected wave. Before you start commenting, with my brute force concept engine having a rotary exhaust valve which blocks that port, this isn't really necessary, or is it? Plan has always been to make a Megaphone exhaust for it, something that just sucks. Picture a pipe without this bit. Just this bit. Last night it dawned on me, I can have this bit suck too. Kinda. You know how I've been raving on and on about resonance. I've even made a t-shirt. These are exhaust ports. Imagine this is the top of the cylinder. Combustion has occurred, the piston is on its way down. This part of the pipe helps evacuate the spent gases from in the combustion chamber, the cylinder. There's a belly portion here, that's kind of a dwell zone, like wait, don't do anything yet. Piston is on its way up. The reflected wave from this part of the pipe starts pushing and blocking this port so that fresh mix can't escape, and some fresh mix that has been pushed into the header can be pushed back in. Then the piston closes that port, and if things are made correctly, part of that returning pulse collides with the piston and starts traveling back down the pipe. That previous pulse or wave that collided with the piston will join forces with the new wave. Every cycle the current wave joins forces with the previous colliding wave. Now, I don't need the pushing or blocking action from this cone. I do want that colliding wave though. That can get us into resonance and increase the amplitude of this primary sucking wave. I'm gonna make the dimensions slightly off so that this returning wave collides more with the piston. Most of its energy is reflected back and can join forces with the sucking wave. I'm gonna source some material later today, but now let's see how the engine performs without an exhaust with 1.45 to 1 blower pulley ratio. Something happened. Somehow the rotary valve slipped once again. It's hard for you to see this, but the valve is opening much too late now. I'm closing far too soon. Did the belt jump? I'll be amazed if my threaded keyway slipped. I can't find anything obviously wrong here. I think it was the belt slipping from not enough tension, lots of oil on the pulleys, a lot of force from all that pressure. I'll clean the pulleys with acetone and replace the belt with a fresh one. We'll see what happens. There's something going on with my software here. Something going on with the auto start of the software. I'll try manual starting it. May seem like 1.45 to 1 blower drive ratio is too much. Much happier with the 2.2 to 1 ratio. I'll go get material for that expansion chamber. Let's see if we can get some more torque at higher RPM with the 2.2 to 1 ratio. After giving it some more thought, I think we'll start with a simple megaphone. Actually, let's cut some pieces out of this pipe and use that as a starting point for our megaphone. I think for this engine it can be relatively short and fat compared to for a normal two-stroke. I'm not concerned about pulling in fresh mixture. I'm mostly concerned about getting rid of exhaust during the blowdown phase, shortening the blowdown phase. The finished product after some filing. Drilled and tapped corresponding holes in this. Total distance from the piston to the end of this is about 370 millimeters, depending on the temperature of the exhaust and the corresponding speed of sound. This should suck pretty hard in the first 70-80 degrees of crank rotation after the piston opens the exhaust port. I'm a little bit worried about the abrupt ending at this relatively small diameter. Worried about the returning pulse screwing things up for me. We could probably gain more suction by a more exponential shape and a larger outlet. Should use even more of the energy and that returning pulse would be weaker. Speaking of that, I have second thoughts about an actual expansion chamber being better than a Megaphone in this application. With a normal expansion chamber, I would have to save some energy here for it to be used here. With a Megaphone, especially a more exponential one, I can use up all the energy here. Okay, get a baseline with this, attach this, see if there's a difference. I think my neighbors will really appreciate this one. Forgot to mention we're going back to the 2.2 to 1 drive ratio. I checked that everything was connected and moved some USB cables around. They're not too happy about being near the power cable. There's still some interference or something on the RPM sensor. I'll readjust it, then we'll try again. Let's see if we can get some runs in running it manually, not auto start. Think about that issue later. As you can see here, the numbers we're seeing on screen while doing the runs are not correct because there's spikes at the beginning of the runs. I can delete this, but there's no point. We can just look at the curves. We're seeing pretty much the same numbers as we've been seeing before with around 20 degrees of timing advance. Let's see if that Megaphone does anything. I've got this great investment plan. Lots of money pooled up on the floor, slowly evaporating. Like inflation. Things are about to get loud. Shit, that was loud. Like stuff were literally falling off the walls. I could see it in my side vision, stuff just falling off the walls. Whole room was vibrating. Did nothing for power though. Quite the opposite, I'll show you. The pinkish color and the black one, that's horsepower and torque for the without Megaphone runs. A bit above 19 horsepower. Now this red one and the blue one, that's horsepower and torque for one of the Megaphone runs. And we saw like 15 horsepower. We lost quite a bit. This isn't entirely negative results though. It shows the Megaphone working, but it's working against the engine. It's not tuned correctly. Probably needs to be longer. I need to sit down and do some calculations and do this properly. And then another test. I feel kind of stupid really, because with the short distance to this Megaphone and with how hot the exhaust gas probably is in the first section here, like say at 12,000 RPM, the pulse probably reaches this point in like 10 degrees of crank rotation and then starts expanding. At this point there's still a huge pressure in the cylinder and there's no way this can create a lower pressure in there. Stupid. We gotta make it longer. Kind of a brain fart because I don't need to suck in fresh mix. I will need this to suck later in the cycle regardless. It's loud as hell though. That's a win. I need to fix the noisy RPM issue before we can take any proper readings though. See you next time.